Hello and welcome to Rain's Kitchen and Garden. My name is Rain. Well, it's spooky season, my friends, and I'm making some Halloween food today. This is my spiderweb cheesecake. It's a New York style cheesecake with a chocolate and vanilla ganache topping. Let me show you how I make this. The first thing that I did was I preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 190 Celsius or gas mark 5. And I put the rack in the lower middle position of the oven. And then I took a spring pan. This is a 10-inch spring form pan, and I buttered it and I wrapped it in aluminum foil, because sometimes with these spring pans they can leak a little bit, and when we actually bake the cheesecake, we're going to bake it in a bath of water. And for those of you who don't know what a spring pan is, I'll show you. They come in usually sets of 3. This is a small one, and it basically has a spring on it, and it opens up and you can pull it off the base of your cake. Because cheesecake is so delicate, you can't really take a spatula and lift it out because it'll just all fall apart. So when you have these spring form pans, they work really, really well for that. Okay, so we're going to make the crust first. What I have here is 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs. That's about 175 grams. Sometimes I buy the actual graham crackers and I crush them up myself, and usually I use between 12 and 15 crackers. You could put the crackers into your blender or into a food processor to crush them up. And what I used to do when I didn't have those appliances was that I would take a zip top bag and I would sort of crush up the crackers as much as I could, put them in the zip top bag, and then take my rolling pin and crush them that way. So there are always ways that you can do it. I've got 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of brown sugar, and I've got 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. That's hard to figure out in grams, but if you take a look here, it's probably about 0.2 grams or 2 big pinches of salt. I'm just going to mix that up and kind of crush up the brown sugar a little bit. There's a big piece of brown sugar there. There we go. And I'm making a little well in the middle, and I have some melted unsalted butter here, and it's cooled a little bit. I've got 5 tablespoons, and that's about 106 grams. I'm going to mix that all up with my spatula. And this is the crust. I love graham cracker crusts. I've actually made this cheesecake also with chocolate wafer crumbs. Those were really good. And I believe I made one with Oreo crumbs too. You don't always have to follow the recipe to a T. You can kind of make it your own. All right, so everything's really well incorporated there. I feel like just taking a spoon and eating that. So I'm going to grab my springform pan here, and I'm going to pour all of that into the pan. Okay. Now I'm going to spread it around. Spread it around really evenly and push it down as you go. You don't necessarily want it to come up the sides of the pan. You just want it flat on the bottom. Make sure you don't have any holes. Get that crust completely covering the bottom of the pan. All right, I've got that covered. And when my oven is ready, I'm going to put that in the oven for about 10 minutes. The graham cracker crust is all baked, so I'm going to set that aside. Now let's make our cheesecake filling. While the crust is cooling down, I've reduced the oven temperature to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 165 degrees Celsius, and gas mark 3. I also put a pot of boiling water on the stove. In a large bowl, I have 4 of those 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese. That's about 1,000 grams or 1 kilogram. This is at room temperature. You want to keep all of your ingredients at room temperature when you're making this recipe. So I'm going to add 2 cups of brown sugar. That's packed brown sugar, about 400 grams. And I've got a little bit of all-purpose flour. I've got 3 tablespoons or 20 grams. Now what I'm going to do is use my beaters and beat that up. Beat that up until it's combined. Don't forget to scrape down your bowl once in a while to make sure everything gets combined well. That's combined very well. Now I'm going to add some vanilla extract. I have 4 teaspoons and that's 20 grams. And I've got some lemon zest. I had 1 fresh lemon, so I took the zest from 1 lemon. It's about a teaspoon or 3 grams. This is my zester. I love this thing. It works so well. I also took the juice from that lemon. I have 2 teaspoons or about 19 mils. And I have 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's about 2 grams. And I'm going to put the beaters back in and mix it on, I'd say medium speed until it's all combined. All right, that's nice and combined and it looks very smooth. I'm going to scrape down the bowl again. That's looking okay. All right. That fresh lemon zest smells really, really nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my eggs. I have 6 large eggs and I'm going to add them one at a time as I beat on low speed. Okay, that's well combined, and as per usual, scraping down the sides just to make sure that everything is combined. It's looking good. Now I'm going to add some sour cream. I've got 1/2 cup here. That's about 125 grams. And I'm just going to mix that in with the beaters. Got a little bit on my spatula there. There we go. Okay. My kitchen smells so good today because I'm baking bread and I made a nice fall soup. That's well incorporated. Now we're ready to bake our cheesecake. First we have to fill the pan. So what you'll need is a roasting pan, and you need a pan where you're going to set your cheesecake pan into. And we're creating a water bath here, or a bain-marie. And what you need is a pan that is going to be large enough or tall enough where you can fill it to 1 inch of water, okay? And for me, I know that that's about where this lip starts. So this is my bain-marie pan. Now that's why we have the hot water going. I'm just going to fill up my cheesecake pan with that filling. I want to get every little bit out of there. That's where a spatula really comes in handy. You can get all the little leftover bits out. Okay, I'm just going to, sorry about the bowl in front of the camera. I'm just going to even that out. Okay. Now here we go. I'm going to take my water that was boiled and pour it into my roasting pan without making too much of a mess. And the amount of water is really going to depend on the size of your roasting pan. I'm missing a little bit, so I'm just going to pour some room temperature water in there just to fill it up, make sure it gets to 1 inch. There we go. Now the reason why we bake our cheesecake in a bain-marie or in a water bath is because cheesecake, just like custard is another thing that you would bake in a water bath. It's very delicate and it helps the cheesecake to bake gently and evenly. It's a bit of a protective barrier so that it doesn't burn. So now I'm going to very carefully, I'm going to put on my oven mitts and I'm going to take my pan and I'm going to put it in my oven and I'm going to bake my cheesecake for 1.5 hours to 1 hour and 45 minutes. When it's done, the cake should not look liquidy at all, but it will wobble a little bit when you nudge the pan. And don't forget that it's going to continue to cook as it cools. My cheesecake was in the oven for 1 hour and 45 minutes. It's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cool it in the water bath for 45 minutes on a wire rack. I removed the springform pan from the water bath and now I'm just going to get rid of the foil. And discard that. Okay, this smells really, really good. Now what I'm going to do is take a butter knife and just go around the edges very carefully just to make sure nothing's going to stick. All right. Now I'm going to cover that with cling film and I'm going to put it in my fridge overnight. And putting it in the fridge overnight is going to help it set even more. And tomorrow we'll have some cheesecake. My cheesecake has been in the fridge overnight. Now it's time for me to remove it from the spring pan. There we go. That's how easy it is when you use the spring pan. Now you could serve it directly on top of the bottom of the spring pan. I personally don't like to do that because I feel like it gets scratched with the knife. So I'm going to try to loosen it up a little bit underneath that graham cracker crust and transfer it over to a serving dish. This is going to be something if I can figure out how to do it without breaking the whole cake apart. This little icing knife comes in handy for this. This icing knife, by the way, I got it at the dollar store. I use it in my cheese making, but it works really well for this purpose too. This is something you have to do with patience. Okay, it's starting to come off the bottom a little bit. There we go. I think I got it. I'm gonna go over the whole thing just to make sure nothing's sticking. Oh, there's a little spot here. There we go. All right, I'm going to transfer this onto my cake plate. Now I'm going to start my ganache. This is the topping that we're going to put on the cheesecake. The first ganache that I'm going to be making is comprised of milk chocolate and dark chocolate. I have a ratio of about 2/3 milk chocolate to 1/3 dark chocolate. And I have a total of 3/4 of a cup, or 117 grams. And as you can see, I've chopped it up into very small bits. It's really important that your chocolate pieces aren't too large, because the chocolate will clump and you won't be able to fix it. And while I'm talking about that, I would also suggest that you don't use your microwave. I know it works for some people, but a lot of the times when I use the microwave, it resulted in clumps and a really, really grainy texture. So I've found this method and it works really, really well for me. Back here in this small little pan, I have a 1/2 cup or 106 mils of heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to be putting this on the burner and bringing it up to a simmer. Don't bring it up to a boil, you just want to bring it up to a simmer. So that's the first ganache that I'm going to make. And the second ganache that I'm going to make is basically going to be the same recipe, except for I'm halving it and I'm making a white chocolate ganache. Here I have 1/4 of a cup of small pieces of white chocolate. That's about 58 grams. And I have 1/4 cup of that heavy whipping cream here. And that is 53 mils, if I've got that right. So I'm going to do them one at a time, starting with the milk and dark chocolate one. And I'm going to show you what to do next. I had my cream on medium heat, and I've been stirring it with my spatula, and I've brought it up to a simmer. So I'm taking that off the heat right away. I'm pouring my cream over my chocolate. And I'm going to give that a little bit of a swirl. Just a little swirl. And I'm going to cover that very tightly with foil. And I'm going to leave that undisturbed for 5 minutes. After the 5-minute mark, what you want to do is you want to whisk until smooth. And the reason why we don't bring our cream up to a boil is because the cream can get too hot. And if it's too hot when you pour it on top of your chocolate, it could burn the chocolate will separate, and you'll get a grainy texture rather than this delicious looking smooth texture. So this worked out perfectly. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this sit for 15 minutes just to let it thicken slightly. And then I'm going to spread it over the cheesecake. My chocolate ganache has thickened a little bit, so I'm giving it a little stir, and I'm just basically going to pour it over my cheesecake. I'm going to give it a little help by turning and being careful that nothing overflows. I don't want my cheesecake to fall off the platter. All right. I think at this point I'm going to add some more. And give it a little help with my spatula, very carefully. All right, I just really wanted to make sure I had enough to cover the top. I have a little bit left in my bowl. I'm just going to put that on top. There we go. I'm going to let that sit for a little while, and then I'm going to add the spider web. I have my pastry bag ready to go. I've put it in a large cup, or you can use a large glass, and I've folded it over. I find that's the easiest way to fill a pastry bag. If you don't have a pastry bag, you could use a zip top bag and just snip off one of the edges, and that'll work well. And I'm going to pour my white chocolate ganache into the pastry bag. I've had this in the fridge for about an hour, so it's thickened up pretty well. Here's a little tip on white chocolate. I really find that white chocolate is very finicky. Sometimes it thickens, sometimes it doesn't. And if you're filling your pastry bag and your white chocolate ganache is just pouring out of the tip of the pastry bag, you need to thicken that up a little bit, and there's a very easy solution for that. You can take a little bit of icing sugar or powdered sugar, you know, 1 spoonful at a time, and just whisk that in until it's all combined. That has happened to me. I have used the exact same recipe and I've had different results. So if ever your white chocolate ganache is too thin, add a few spoonfuls, 2, 3, 4, as much as you need to thicken it up to your liking. Now I'm going to take my pastry bag, and I can't really multitask here, so I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. My dog is on the ground next to me here. Go on, Jack, go on. Okay, so you want to do like a swirl, and then what you're going to do is take a skewer or a toothpick and watch. Go to the middle and just pull it out. And this makes a beautiful, beautiful web design. Look at that, isn't that cool? And it's so easy. There it is, spiderweb cheesecake. Oh, it fell apart just a little bit. There's our cheesecake. Let me get that little piece here. Right to the front. That looks so good. I can't wait to try this. I think it's cooked very well. I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends, and I hope you attempt to make this cheesecake. It takes a couple of days to make, but it's so worth it. Homemade cheesecake is delicious. And this is a New York style cheesecake, which basically means it's heavy on the cream cheese and it makes it a little more dense. It's so delicious. And if you make the cheesecake, you don't necessarily have to put the ganache on top. You could serve it any time of the year by putting some pie filling on top, like cherries or blueberries. You could put a chocolate sauce. You could even put caramel on top. It's so versatile. If you enjoyed this video, my friends, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please leave me a comment. I love your comments and I do reply to them. So we'll see you next time on Rain's Kitchen and Garden. Happy Halloween. Bye.